It's great to have you this evening. My name is Jamie Davies, and I'm the new executive officer at Mary Aikenhead Ministries. And we learned a little trick yesterday, although I don't want to steal Maggie's thunder, that you can't have Mary Aikenhead without AI. So that's our beginning joke for the evening. It's good to have you. I'm just going to start with a few housekeeping bits, the usual housekeeping bits. In case you've forgotten, please silence your phone. That's the first one. I think you probably saw the toilets, but they're just outside these doors by the elevators. And if we get unlucky and we have any kind of emergency and the alarms sound, Janelle and Troy will be outside these doors by the two stairwells to lead you down the stairways. No lifts. I also want to let you know that both our online participants, and we have many online participants tonight. Thank you for joining us. That we are recording both online and here at ACU. And if any of you want to make sure that you're not in any images, just let one of the staff know and we'll take care of it. I think those are the main things. So to commence officially, I would like to ask Dr. Siupele Haukoloa Baya to come lead us for the acknowledgement of country, followed by our trustee, Gary Humphreys, to lead the prayer. Thank you. Doctor?
Ooh, hello. So for those who haven't seen my acknowledgements, it's quite unique in itself, but it's because that's how my uncle, who's the chairman of the Torres Straits, has said to me, when you go to the mainland, my boy, you show them what we can do all the way from the islands. So I come from the dream time, from the dusty red soil plain. I am the ancient heart, the keeper of the flame. I am the rock, I am the sky. I watch the tall ships come. For 60,000 years I've been the first Australian. Ialagay na lagakalay te putema nga oputuya damanabia. Argan be migilagar na kapunada sinu. Guban tira matalumay kupsi patayu tema. Kai pai pa da da maluyar gar kup kuki chip chip chip. On behalf of the, I have trouble saying this word, Venerable or Venerable, there we go, Mary Aikenhead Oration, I acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Camaragal of the Eora Nation. We stand on their country and show gratitude for the work they have done to preserve this land, and we pay respects to their elders. Let's take a moment where we gather to reflect on the enduring legacy of compassion, dignity, and service that Mary Aikenhead lived and inspired. Her vision continues to guide our mission to serve the most vulnerable with love and justice. I am grateful that Maggie Doherty, Director of the Centre for the Art of Dying Well, is here with us, and her work gently opens the space for conversations around death, not as a medical event, but as a deeply human and spiritual journey. This aligns beautifully with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, where we see death not as an end, but as a return to country and spirit, a transition deeply connected to our ancestors, our land, and our culture. In these beliefs, we find shared values of dignity, connection, and community at the end of life. Margaret's work invites us to honor these perspectives, to listen deeply, and to ensure that end-of-life care is culturally respectful and spiritually rich. Let's have a great night this evening. Thank you, everyone.
What a beautiful honouring of culture and acknowledgement of country. Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you. And so we gather. As we gather for the 2025 Venerable Mary Aikenhead Oration, we pause first in prayer, recognising our spiritual heritage. We come together to honour the life and legacy of Mary Aikenhead, founder, servant, visionary, and to open our hearts to the movement of the Holy Spirit in our time. We reflect on the theme From Dublin to Digital, Mary Aikenhead's vision in the AI era, seeking wisdom for how we carry her mission in today's changing world. And so we pray. God of every time and season, you called Mary Aikenhead to walk with the poor, to bring light to those in darkness, and to found a community of hope and healing. As we gather in her name this evening, we ask that your Spirit guide our thoughts, open our hearts, and awaken in us a deeper commitment to justice, compassion, and courageous love. May this oration stir within us a renewed vision for the world we are shaping, a world where human dignity is upheld, a technology serves rather than replaces the human heart. And we make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. And so we listen to Scripture, and this is a reading from the prophet Micah. What does the Lord require of you but to act justly, love tenderly, and walk humbly with your God? The word of the Lord. So we reflect on that reading, and the question asked by the prophet Micah thousands of years ago feels startlingly relevant today. In an era defined by rapid digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and global connectivity, the world urges us to move faster, to think bigger, to innovate endlessly. But Micah reminds us that God's requirements are, in essence, beautifully simple and radically countercultural. Act justly, love tenderly, and walk humbly. Mary Aikenhead embodied this way of living. In the 19th century Dublin, and later through the mission of the Sisters of Charity in Australia, she responded not to trends or technology, but to human need. She acted with justice, defending the poor and the sick. She loved tenderly, offering care that recognised the dignity of each person, and she walked humbly, grounded in faith and the gospel. So what does Micah ask of us in 2025? It asks us to ensure that as we embrace AI and digital tools, we never abandon the human person. That justice may guide how these technologies are used, especially for the vulnerable. That tenderness must not be lost in the convenience of automation. That humility must anchor our progress, reminding us that wisdom begins not with data, but with compassion. Mary Aikenhead's vision still speaks today, to respond boldly to the needs of the world, but never without justice, never without love, and never without God. So with that reflection and gathering and prayer, I'd like to ask Richard to come to the table.
Thanks, Gary, and good evening, everyone. On behalf of the trustees of Mary Aikenhead Ministries, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 2025 Venerable Mary Aikenhead Oration. The oration is held each year to commemorate and honour the anniversary of Mary Aikenhead's death on July 22, 1858. It is a moment for reflection, gratitude, and recommitment to the mission she began over 2 centuries ago. I'd like to acknowledge and welcome with us tonight Bishop Denny Ma, Auxiliary Bishop, Archdiocese of Sydney, Sister Lorraine Dixon, the Congregational Leader of the Sisters of Charity in Australia, and many other sisters who are joining us both online and in person. Sister Patricia Lenahan, the Congregational Leader of the Sisters of Charity in Ireland, religious brothers and sisters from other religious orders and members of the clergy, board chairs, directors and executives of our education and health ministries, and the many friends and partners of Mary Aikenhead Ministries. Thank you all for your presence tonight. And of course, a very special welcome to our guest orator for 2025, Maggie Doherty, who will be more formally introduced a little later. Maggie, we very much look forward to hearing your insights and perspectives. This year's theme, as you heard, From Dublin to Digital, Mary Aikenhead's vision in the AI era, invites us to reflect deeply on the relevance of Mary's mission in a world now shaped by artificial intelligence, digital systems, and rapid technological change. Mary Aikenhead was a woman well ahead of her time. Born in Dublin in 1787, she brought a bold, compassionate, and faith-filled response to the suffering of the poor and the sick. When she founded the Religious Sisters of Charity in 1815, her mission was simple but profound: to serve the most vulnerable with courage, dignity, and love. What made Mary's vision radical, and why it still speaks to us today, was her unwavering belief in the power of education and formation. She saw education not merely as instruction, but as liberation, a pathway to human dignity and a way to prepare people to meet the needs of a changing world. It is in this same spirit that Venerable Mary Aikenhead Oration is held each year, to nurture dialogue between our enduring values of our tradition and the realities of the contemporary world in which we operate. So how does Mary Aikenhead's legacy speak to a world shaped by digital transformation and artificial intelligence? How do we ensure these technologies serve the common good, especially those on the margins? The Sisters of Charity brought Mary's mission from Dublin to Australia in 1838. They were pioneers in healthcare, education, and social outreach. Today, through Mary Aikenhead Ministries, we continue this legacy, navigating a new kind of frontier where data, digital systems, and automation are reshaping how we teach, how we heal, how we communicate, and even how we care. But despite all this change, one thing remains constant: the light of Mary's vision. We are called to listen, to accompany, and to advocate, to remain grounded in compassion, to place human dignity at the heart of every decision, technological or otherwise. As we prepare to hear tonight's oration, may we do so with open minds and reflective hearts. May we be inspired not just by where Mary Aikenhead began, but by where her vision leads us today, beyond the horizon of innovation and always towards the heart of the gospel. Let me now invite my fellow trustee, Penny Wright, to formally introduce our guest speaker, Maggie Doherty. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you to everyone who's here, everyone online, our special guests, and for all of you making the time to hear about this very, very special lady, both in person in the room and Venerable Mary Aikenhead. The Mary Aikenhead Oration honours the legacy of a woman whose life was a profound testimony to faith, service, and the inherent dignity of every human life. We hope to share the person who was Venerable Mary Aikenhead with you and create a deeper understanding of the charism and founding story of Mary Aikenhead and the Religious Sisters of Charity. Last night, during the global gathering celebrating Venerable Mary Aikenhead's feast day, she was described as forthright, resilient, compassionate, steadfast, life-giving, free, as possessing integrity, courage, a bold vision, and demonstrating unity and love. She had a vision of human flourishing that comes to life in the charism of the sisters. She recognised that every human person has a mind, body and soul to be cherished no matter where they find themselves in life. Her faith was such that her love of Christ could be shared in everything she did, recognising the dignity of each person so that all can be enabled equal participation throughout society. She found allies in anyone who would step towards a common vision of hope and fellowship with others. In words I heard spoken last night, her hope was great and her vision was profound. We are so privileged to welcome a speaker whose life and work embody that same spirit of compassion, innovation, and deep engagement with both the sacred and the social. Maggie Doherty is a leading voice in the fields of death literacy, end-of-life care, and public engagement with questions that many of us instinctively shy away from. Questions about suffering, compassion, and how we live and die well. She is the founding director of the Centre for the Art of Living and Dying Well at St Mary's University in London. Under her leadership, the centre has grown from a digital startup into a nationally recognised institution, delivering award-winning initiatives and securing major partnerships across healthcare, education, faith communities and policy. Maggie's vision has shaped innovative research, such as a collaboration with the think tank Demos, using artificial intelligence to analyse over 110,000 conversations on death and dying, and has participated in training more than 1,500 carers, teachers, seminarians and volunteers across England and Wales. Maggie also brings a powerful theological imagination to her work, informed by Catholic social teaching, particularly the dignity of the human person and a preferential option for the poor. Her work echoes the core message of the Church's recent document, Antiqua et Nova, which reminds us that true human intelligence is not only rational, but relational, contemplative, and moral. Maggie's career seems custom-made for her to bring a unique lens to a world with AI. It is a lens profoundly important for us as we navigate a changing landscape that could seek to replace a core part of what it means to be human with machine learning and data analysis. In listening to Maggie, we can hear the challenge clearly: how to harness AI to empower people not only to care well for others, but to enhance our relationships. Whether through her research with diverse faith communities in Birmingham, being part of bereavement training with new teachers at St Mary's, or as part of a podcast, which there's a joke in this, but I just don't know where the joke is, which The Guardian notes is one of the top 3 on death. Boom, boom. Maggie has a gift to open dialogue with truth, tenderness and accompaniment. I must say, from spending the small amount of time I have with Maggie in the past 10 days, I have observed her absolutely remarkable gift of being able to sit calmly in the face of the unknown as time and accompaniment provide the space for opportunity. Maggie has a deep connection with Mary Aikenhead as she serves as a trustee of St Joseph's Hospice in Hackney, a hospice founded by the Sisters of Charity in 1905 by another 5 travelling nuns. It was a moment of joy to see that same community online last night. In the spirit of Venerable Mary Aikenhead and the first 5 sisters who travelled to Australia in 1838, may we listen with courage to the challenge of finding a new way of doing the old as we navigate to an unknown land of AI while holding fast to what we know to be true. Please join me in welcoming tonight's very special orator, Maggie Doherty.
Thank you, Penny, and thank you, everyone. And thank you for the invitation. It's been such a gift to be here, a true gift, and to get to know Mary Aikenhead and her sisters more through the research for the oration. And she was at work on the flight over here, actually. I'm just wondering whether Helen's here. The person who I was sat beside, who I didn't know until I got sat beside her, but she was actually from Dublin and was a specialist in AI and digital. So that was Mary Aikenhead at work. And as Jamie said yesterday, we were at St Vincent's College and very kindly invited us, and Penny very kindly set it all up. And as Jamie said, you can't take the AI out of Aikenhead. So she was fit for the world of AI and most importantly, the world of the human. So can we go to Mary herself?
Good evening. I am Mary Aikenhead, born in Cork, Ireland, at a time when healthcare and education were luxuries reserved for the few. I took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience and service of the poor, so that I and the Sisters of Charity could serve those most forgotten. I could never have imagined a world like this one, where machines speak, doctors heal across oceans, and knowledge is delivered through glass screens. Yet, I recognize the soul behind these advances. It is the same mission that inspired me over 2 centuries ago: to bring compassion where there is suffering and hope where there is hopelessness. Let us journey together now, from Dublin to digital.
From Dublin to digital. And I'd like to begin with a special thanks to Professor Julia Riley, Professor Jim McManus, who Francis knows well, Carolyn Barber and Sister Maria Coates for agreeing to one-to-one interviews for me for this oration. To begin, in the early 19th century, Venerable, and I hope you're giving permission to call her Mary going forward, Mary Aikenhead could not have predicted a future in which telemedicine, the delivery of healthcare services at a distance, wearable technology, all products that can be worn on a user's body to integrate computing with their daily tasks and activities, and virtual wards, also known as hospitals at home, allow patients to get hospital-level care at home safely and in familiar surroundings, helping speed up their recovery while freeing up hospital beds for patients that need them most. She'd never have imagined that this would be a reality used to provide care, and also that virtual learning would be accessible for all. That secure schools being a planned new form of youth custody, would take the place of juvenile detention centres, and virtual reality headsets would allow us to explore new worlds. She and her Sisters of Charity would, however, perhaps recognise the driving purpose of these developments: to enable everyone to access the care and education they deserve, regardless of where they were born or their individual circumstances in life. As we gather today to reflect on the life and the legacy of Mary Aikenhead, we find ourselves at a remarkable crossroads in history. This oration will explore the challenges as well as the opportunities of AI through the lens of the mission and the life and work of Mary Aikenhead. I will examine how her foundational principles and innovative spirit might guide us in this new era, particularly within the Australian context, where her legacy thrives through Mary Aikenhead Ministries in healthcare, education, research, aged care, social services, and prison ministry. So to begin, Mary Aikenhead, a life of innovation, a true life of innovation, and a true life of service. Before we can imagine Mary Aikenhead's response to artificial intelligence, we must first understand the woman herself and the context in which she worked. Her love of the poor was born out of love of Christ, with the motto Caritas Christi urget nos, the love of Christ compels us. Her first love, as you know, came from her conversion after being impacted by a homily about the parable of Dives and Lazarus. This parable tells of a rich man who ignores a poor beggar called Lazarus and their future destinies in the afterlife. This parable stirred her conscience about the contrast between her life and the life of others. She was part of a rich aristocratic family, but her father, a doctor, used to go out to visit all the patients, rich or poor, and brought Mary with him. I was really struck by that. That's how she learnt to love the poor. She saw what her father did. She was rooted in the charism of love of the poor. She knew that she couldn't just sit there. Her father had shown her the way. Her approach was very practical. The Sisters of Charity didn't just pray for the poor. They don't just pray for the poor, important though that is. They learn medical skills, they learn to teach, and they learn whatever is needed to provide the right support. They use the tools available to them to innovate new forms of care. Perhaps most significant for our reflection today, Mary Aikenhead and her sisters took a fourth vow beyond the traditional vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They vowed to serve the poor. This vow placed the needs of the marginalized at the center of their mission and their identity. In all of this, we see a woman who didn't simply accept the limitations of her time, but worked creatively within and sometimes against them to fulfill her mission of service. She was passionate, a woman ahead of her time. She was also fearless, with a great love for the poor and the dying, wanting to give to the poor what the rich could buy with money. She wanted to do it regardless of the barriers, and there were many in those days, even within the church due to its structure back then. But she overcame all of that, which is why we're all here today, and thank you for coming. To begin, digital transformation in healthcare and education. Today we are moving into another era, one that Mary Aikenhead could not have predicted, but would most likely engage with, the digital transformation of society. In healthcare, we are seeing so many different technologies across various healthcare settings. Artificial intelligence is contributing to areas like radiotherapy, identifying the precise location of tumours, and proposing tailored treatment pathways that adjust in real time. Virtual reality enables patients to visit locations that hold meaning for them, explore nature scenes, or even travel through the solar system, bringing comfort and wonder to those confined by illness. Smart homes equipped with devices and systems that can be controlled remotely help patients live independently for longer. Remote monitoring supports symptom management and prevents unplanned hospital admissions. Population health data supports palliative care decisions for individuals and communities. It's also important to acknowledge and address digital legacy, to know how an individual and their family would like their data to be managed after they die. One respondent in a survey that I recently carried out of public attitudes towards digital health in end of life and bereavement care said if a family close friend was not living close by or in another country and they could not visit that person in their last hours due to distance, then this gives both the patient who is at end of life a chance to see and speak if they can with their loved ones. Digital health technologies can also help reduce travel times, which is beneficial for those living with mobility issues or far away from primary care facilities, as well as for the environment. My pilot research project highlighted that 75% of respondents are open to the possibility of using digital technologies in these contexts, with video calls being widely accepted by over 80%. However, AI chatbots for bereavement support were not well received, with only about 16% of respondents likely to use them in this care context. And each person who has spoken this evening has spoken about the importance of the human being in the middle, being slap bang in the middle. And the research highlighted this. It said human beings need personal touch and care, and that cannot be replaced by AI and digital. And a call for a balance between digital and personal touch. This would be a wonderful combination. And these sentiments would surely echo Mary Aikenhead's own perspective. Technology must enhance, not replace human connection. Digital can go anywhere and does go anywhere. This is especially true in Australia, with its vast geography and remote communities. And Australia has been ahead of the curve for some time, with the Royal Flying Doctors helping those who live in the most remote parts of country. Even those living in the most difficult circumstances often have mobile phones, challenging assumptions about who will embrace digital technologies. One of the digital experts that I interviewed for this oration said that it's arrogant to assume that if people are poor or they're marginalized or they're elderly or they're vulnerable, they don't embrace digitalization. She said, I would say the opposite is true. In education, and I had the privilege of visiting St. Vincent's College yesterday, as I said, virtual classrooms connect students and teachers across distances. Online learning platforms, digital resources, and virtual reality experiences make learning engaging for those who might otherwise be excluded. Think of Australia's School of the Air, and of course, think of Notre Dame, Australia as well. Even in prison ministry, a ministry which was important to Mary Aikenhead, digital technologies can provide secure online learning platforms for those in prison or detention to access educational opportunities. Yet these technologies also raise questions and concerns. They could extend existing inequalities. How do we ensure that digital tools enhance rather than replace human care? How do we guarantee that these technologies serve the mission rather than distract from it? How do we make certain that the most vulnerable are not left behind in this digital revolution? These are the questions that I believe Mary Aikenhead would ask. And to answer them, we need to look at the principles that guided her life and her work. So these, I believe, are her compass points for AI in society. And going back to the definition of AI, according to the magazine Medium, AI is now being used in various industries, including healthcare, finance, manufacturing, and transportation, among others. And I'm sure many of you are involved in those areas of work. In healthcare, as we've discussed, AI is used to diagnose diseases, analyze medical images, and develop personalized treatment plans. In finance, AI is used to detect fraud, make investment decisions, and manage risks. In manufacturing, AI is used to optimize production, reduce waste, and improve quality control. In transportation, AI is used to develop self-driving cars, optimize traffic flow, and improve road safety. Back to Mary Aikenhead. If she were with us today, what principles would guide her engagement with artificial intelligence and digital technologies? Based on her life and writings and the ongoing work of the institutions that bear her name, she would offer us several compass points to navigate this new era. Practicality, prudence, and pragmatism. First and foremost, I believe that Mary Aikenhead would emphasize practicality. She was very rooted in practicality, not getting caught up with the latest trend. She would have her feet on the ground, asking, what can we do? She was pragmatic, prudent, but also willing to take risks, because she trusted that the Holy Spirit would always be her guiding light, even in darkness and even in error. She never failed to trust in the Lord's way of setting paths straight. Mary Aikenhead would ensure that technology served human dignity. She would want to understand where AI helped with that, but also understand where AI would get in the way and hinder it. She would ask perceptive questions. Does this technology treat people as ends in themselves or merely as means? Does it respect their agency and autonomy? And she'd not want anyone to be left behind in the era of AI. Just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done now, was one of her sayings. She would likely see the challenge of digital exclusion as something to be actively addressed, not accepted as inevitable. Service to the marginalised. As we've heard, Mary Aikenhead's fourth vow, service to the poor, would inform her approach to technology as well. She would evaluate AI and digital tools based on their potential to serve those on the margins of society. She would be asking herself, how does this make the lives of the most excluded and marginalised better and more human? Where is the potential of AI for mission and ministry? How might AI help the marginalised communities? She would be particularly concerned with using AI as a tool to help make the charitable response more efficient. One for you, Richard, as Chair of Trustees, and Penny and all the trustees. For Mary Aikenhead, we are here for anyone in need at the point of need, regardless of faith background. This simple but profound principle would guide her approach to digital technologies. Would they help the sisters to help more people at their point of need? If so, she would engage with them. In Australia, this principle would lead her to pay particularly attention to the needs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I believe that she would insist on consultation and collaborations with Indigenous communities to ensure that digital tools respected values and needs. She had what we might call a Catholic love, a universal love for all. She would learn from elders and community leaders about their needs and priorities, rather than assuming she knew what was best for them. She would support mobile health clinics, which respect local cultures to bring specialist care to remote areas. And indeed, the outreach work that Erin and her team at St Vincent's Homeless Health Services are doing here in Sydney itself. I believe that she'd use digital technologies as tools to bridge cultural divides and extend services to Indigenous communities, always with a focus of enhancing rather than replacing human connection. Deep trust in providence and practical innovation. Mary was deeply practical, as I've said, but also had a deep trust in providence. She would see AI and technology as wonderful gifts of providence, but she'd also be practical about it. She wouldn't be seduced by it to the point of losing the simplicity of direct human connection or becoming blind to the reality of what is in front of us. She would also be very concerned about authenticity. She wouldn't be easily swayed by fake news or opinions that were becoming politicized. She'd do the research and insist on getting to the truth of matters. Mary would use digital as a tool to do more for others, but never in a way that diminished the person in front of her, the patient, the person in need, the student. She would have one eye on day-to-day practicality and the other eye on the outreach service that technology could provide. She would see technology as breaking down barriers, like how the sisters reached out to the lonely during the COVID pandemic. For the last 20 years of her life, Mary Aikenhead served from her room due to illness. She was wheeled out in a big wheelchair to greet people, but she made sure the sisters went into all the homes that needed them. She started visiting people in prison, both men and women. She did things that were never thought of before because traditionally sisters didn't go out into the world. She opened many possibilities for the Sisters of Charity, and she did it from her bed for the last 20 years of her life. Her approach was like that of Florence Nightingale, who also served from her bed. She empowered others to carry out the mission through letters of instruction, signing off many policies. This ability to lead and serve without being physically present would make her particularly appreciative of the possibilities of digital communication, which could extend her reach beyond physical limitations. And of course, we've got people from across the world joining us on Zoom, which is wonderful too. And welcome this evening. Discernment and balance. And I think of you, Sister Anne, because this is your special area. Mary Aikenhead was guided by Ignatian spirituality and the practice of discerning the spirit in decision making. She was cautious, but also willing to take risks because she trusted the Holy Spirit. This discernment would lead her to seek balance between innovation and tradition, between technological efficiency and human compassion, between individual care and systemic change. She'd recognise that digital tools can enhance human connection when in-person interaction is not possible. But I believe that she would also insist on maintaining the personal touch that is so essential to healing and to education. She'd not make decisions rashly. She would sit with a decision for days, observing how it made her feel prayerfully and where the Holy Spirit was in that. Then she'd look at the opposite option and sit with that too. She'd never make a decision in a period of darkness or desolation, but would wait for the new dawn in her soul before deciding. The spirit of discernment would help guide decisions in this new era. I'm sure that Mary would prayerfully reflect and consult before implementing new technologies so that new tools serve the mission. The Prison Ministry, a case study in digital innovation. A modern example of innovative prison ministry that Mary Aikenhead would surely embrace is Oasis Restore, the UK's first secure school. While not directly connected to the Sisters of Charity, Oasis Restore shares many of the principles that Mary Aikenhead lived by. The secure school represents a revolutionary approach to youth justice, one that puts education, healthcare, and well-being at the centre rather than punishment and control. Oasis Restore is aligned with Youth Justice Board's Child First principles and guided by the truth that children are different from adults. This means that each child's voice is listened to, valued, and opportunities are created for them to contribute within a school community, where adults make the final decisions in the best interests of the child. Their aim is for children to value their time at Oasis Restore, to enjoy learning, and to leave ready to contribute to society. The school acknowledges that traumatic early life experiences, adversity, and exploitation negatively affect the children they serve and those around them, including the victim of their crimes. Young people placed at the secure school will need to come to terms with the consequences of their criminal behaviour. The sentence is their punishment. Their job is to listen to and understand the stories behind those actions, to support them, to start making amends in whatever ways they can, and to help them build the skills they need for a positive future. This approach mirrors Mary's own philosophy of tending to the whole person, mind, body, and soul. The environment at Oasis Restore feels compassionate and child-oriented, nurturing children to change, grow, and learn. Security is built into the infrastructure without feeling oppressive, but still appropriately secure. There are no bars on windows, no keys or locks, only wristband-operated fobs. Mary would see how this approach brings together innovation with respect for the dignity of each young person, just as she and her sisters sought to bring healing and hope to those they served. Oasis Restore aims to help young people develop a healthy sense of identity and of purpose, and to improve students' emotional intelligence and support them as they move forward in life. I believe that Mary Aikenhead would look for ways to enhance rather than replace human connections, knowing that relationships are key to the rehabilitation process. Digital health transformation, the New Zealand model, your neighbour here. One example of how digital technologies can transform healthcare comes from New Zealand, where a digital system has been implemented to coordinate care across different settings. This model, while not directly connected to Mary Aikenhead Ministries, highlights many of the principles that Mary Aikenhead called for and lived by. Professor Julia Riley, a palliative care physician and digital entrepreneur whom I interviewed for this oration, and she's accompanied 50,000 people as they've died, experienced this system firsthand. She describes an incredible journey through multiple care pathways, from emergency to surgery to outpatient care to specialized testing, all seamlessly connected through digital infrastructure. Everything revolved around me, and the whole system worked around me, joining different pathways, but all being connected digitally. Those are the words of Julia. The system ensures that patients don't have to repeat their stories at each stage of their care. When a patient moves from one department to another, their records follow them, ensuring that each care provider has a complete picture of their needs and their history. You don't have to repeat yourself anywhere you go. It was remarkable. The system has been designed to optimize each stage of care. Specialized departments focus on what they do best, whether that's emergency medicine, surgery, or diagnostic testing. As Riley observed, when you're in the X-ray department or the imaging department, all is calm and it's clean. They know an ultrasound of your leg takes 15 minutes, so you don't wait. Everything is fit for purpose. This approach not only improves the patient's experience, but also makes the healthcare system more efficient. New Zealand uses less of their GDP than the UK does on health, highlighting that the right digital systems can improve care while also keeping budgets healthy. Mary Aikenhead would see how this type of digital technology enhances rather than replaces human care. It serves as a tool to enhance coordination and communication, allowing healthcare providers to focus on time with patients. This example offers a vision that combines the best of innovation with the enduring values that have guided the Sisters of Charity since their founding. Mary and digital health records. One moving story from St. Joseph's Hospice in London, which Carolyn Barber and Sister Maria Coates very kindly shared with me, illustrates Mary Aikenhead's approach to digital health records. Quite recently, a historian asked whether he could look up a patient who died in 1916. The woman, Sonia, had murdered her husband, who was a brute, and had forced her to work in brothels in the East End. She had taken an opportunity to grab a gun and shoot him. She was sent to Holloway prison, got sick, and word got back to the sisters. They immediately took her in at St. Joseph's, saying, "Take off that address of Holloway. She's coming to this place." She died there in peace a few months later. What's remarkable about this story is that it was done without fuss. Nobody knew about it because that was part of the humility of the sisters. They didn't broadcast what they did. It was just humble service. They didn't care who people were. You just come here, we care for you, you die peacefully, and that's your story. And also, what's remarkable about this story is that the record still existed. Mary would likely embrace the potential of integrated digital health records, but always with an eye to how they serve the dignity and the needs of patients. At St. Joseph's Hospice in London, as I've described, the sisters kept records of every patient with each patient name documented. The move towards integrated electronic health records aligns with Mary's commitment to providing the best possible care. She would be very much up for everything. She wasn't frightened of anything. If she thought it was the right thing to do, she would do it. For Mary, the key question would be practical. If it enhances care and quality, so things like joining up communication and networking, I think she would be absolutely behind that. Mary would surely make sure that no one is excluded from care because of a lack of access to information. If there is poverty because somebody can't communicate or isn't at the receiving end of information or treatment, she would fight for that quality totally. However, she would be wary of anything that became glamorization or sensationalism. She'd always bring it back to her core values, prudence, her practicality, and how is this tool serving? The litmus test for Mary Aikenhead would be, how is it serving? Quality and compassion, all those core values. That's how she'd measure her outcomes. For joined up working across healthcare systems, she'd be definitely up for it. But she wouldn't be frightened to stand up if she didn't agree with how it was being implemented. She was able to stand up for what she believed in, which is how she accomplished so much in her lifetime. AI, digital legacy, and immortality. I think that Mary Aikenhead would keep an eye on digital legacy in the AI era. Father Stephen Wang, the rector of the English College in Rome, a seminary in Rome, gave a lecture in Melbourne last year on the philosophical and theological implications of artificial intelligence. He explored these deep questions. He said there is a website called Hereafter, which says on the homepage, your stories and voice forever, preserve memories with an app that interviews you about your life. Then let loved ones hear meaningful stories by chatting with the virtual you. I think that she'd likely appreciate how digital legacy tools could provide comfort to grieving families and help hand down wisdom across generations. At the same time, she would be concerned about whether this technology might shift our understanding of immortality and human destiny. Mary Aikenhead would surely ask that digital legacy tools respect the dignity of the deceased. She'd evaluate these technologies based on whether they serve the needs of grieving loved ones, while keeping true to the understanding of death, resurrection, and eternal life within the Christian tradition. As Father Wang points out, on the one hand, this is deeply troubling if it extends so far that death becomes inconceivable for many people. Where does this leave a Christian theology of the last things, of death, judgment, heaven and hell? On the other hand, this renewed interest in immortality could be a sign of a deeper questioning within our culture. In their eyes, death is not trivial, it's a bad thing, and they would want to conquer it. This is part of the Christian message. I believe that Mary Aikenhead would see in these tools the potential dangers and opportunities for ministry and for increasing our understanding of what truly matters in both life and in death. Applying Mary's principles, AI in practice. How might these principles guide the practical application of AI and digital technologies in the various ministries established by Mary Aikenhead? Let us consider some specific examples. Education, expanding access and opportunity. In education, I believe that Mary would embrace technologies that help learning to become more fun and engaging, particularly for students studying outside the traditional educational system. Online learning platforms that connect students in remote areas. Educational software that makes learning suitable for individual needs. Virtual reality experiences that bring abstract concepts to life. She would also be concerned about how best to develop character and virtues, the nurturing of students who are going to make a difference in their families, in their local communities, and in society. Mary Aikenhead would insist that digital tools enhance these aspects of education. In this context, Mary Aikenhead might agree with Father Stephen Wang's thoughts on AI and religious formation. Father Wang questions, could you have an AI spiritual director? I think so. It would be limited, but with the right listening skills and the right data set, it could generate helpful and encouraging spiritual advice that would speak to people in their individual needs. While Mary Aikenhead would surely prioritize human relationships in spiritual formation, she'd also recognize, as Father Wang suggests, that how many people have access to an in-person meeting with a wise spiritual director? Statistically, almost zero. Reaching those most in need. It's likely that Mary Aikenhead would see the value of technologies which support vulnerable populations, digital platforms connecting homeless individuals to services and housing, mobile apps helping refugees integrate into new communities and access support, and data analytics predicting where support is most needed and how it is best deployed. St. Vincent's Care Services is already using digital tools to support elderly Australians, health monitoring, record keeping and communication, whilst keeping compassionate care at the heart of its mission. Mary would value technologies that give a platform to the voices of marginalised communities. I believe that she would approach digital technologies in the same way that she guided her sisters at St. Joseph's Hospice. We are here for anyone in need at the point of need. She would see technology as a tool to be able to reach more people while ensuring that support is available to everyone, whatever their background or circumstances. Challenges and concerns. Mary Aikenhead's raised eyebrow. This was something that Professor Jim McManus said that Mary Aikenhead would do, that she'd raise her eyebrow. While Mary Aikenhead would likely embrace the positive potential of AI and digital technologies, she would also approach them with a healthy skepticism. She would likely, this is what Jim said, have at least one raised eyebrow permanently at AI. I think that she'd be scratching her head on variants of humanizing and dehumanizing influence. The risk of dehumanization. First and foremost, Mary Aikenhead would be concerned about the potential for technology to dehumanize care and education. I think that she'd issue a strong corrective to some of the more sci-fi radical bits of AI by saying, actually, there has to be a personal touch, and there has to be a human touch, and there has to be a relationship behind it. In healthcare, she might ask questions about the use of AI chatbots for sensitive conversations and the development of systems that make treatment decisions based solely on algorithms without considering the individual's unique circumstances and preferences. In education, she might question learning platforms that focus solely on measurable outcomes while overlooking the development of character, values, and relationships. She would be concerned about technologies that isolate students from one another or substitute virtual interactions from face-to-face community. She would remind us that the heart of healing and education lies in relationships between caregivers and patients, between teachers and students, and between community members supporting one another. She would use AI as the tool, as the means by which she could serve more. On artificial companionship, Father Wang shares in his lectures that an AI friend might listen to you and encourage you. They might hold you to account more than your real friends. Mary would likely agree with Father Wang that you might say that this is a poor substitute for real friendship. But what if somebody doesn't have any close friends and there is little hope of finding any soon? This pragmatism might resonate with Mary's commitment to meeting people at their point of need. Digital exclusion and inequality. Mary would be concerned about how technologies might increase existing inequalities. She'd underline that technology needs to serve everyone, not just the few. I think she'd also be concerned about reliability issues. In my recent survey, respondents, I'm laughing because we've had a few technology issues over the last couple of days. Computer systems are not reliable. Mobile signals variable. Wi-Fi can be flaky. And we don't want to have to remember passwords when I'm dying. These practical concerns will be taken seriously by Mary, who always focused on the concrete realities of people's lives. Privacy, security, and authenticity. Mary would be very hot on authenticity. Is that right, Sister Anne? And would not be easily swayed by fake news or things that were opinions that were becoming politicized. She'd go and do the research to find out the truth. In healthcare, she might question the storage and sharing of personal health data, particularly when there are commercial companies involved. She'd worry about systems that make decisions about care without oversight. In education, she might question the collection of student data and its use for purposes beyond immediate educational needs. She'd be concerned about learning platforms that track students' activities in ways that compromise privacy. The speed of change and discernment. Finally, I believe that Mary would be worried about the speed of technological change. She would question the move fast and break things philosophy. She'd ask that time be spent on ethical reflection, consultation with stakeholders, and that mission and values would be at the heart of any tech decision. She would remind us that not all technological innovations serve the common good, and that discernment is essential to discovering those that do and those that do not serve the common good. This does not mean that Mary would be resistant to change or innovation, quite the contrary. Her own life demonstrates a willingness to break with tradition and try new approaches when these better serve the mission. AI ethics and Catholic social teaching. Pope Leo XIV has spoken of how AI is one of the main issues facing humanity today. In his first speech to the diplomatic corps, he highlighted that AI poses challenges to defending human dignity, justice, and labor. The choice of the name Leo is significant in relation to AI ethics. As I'm sure you all know, it recalls Leo XIII's encyclical Rerum Novarum, which established the principles for Catholic social teaching in response to the Industrial Revolution. In our own day, Pope Leo says, the Church offers to everyone the treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and to developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. In his message to the second annual Rome Conference on Artificial Intelligence, he said AI, especially generative AI, has opened new horizons on many different levels, including enhancing research in healthcare and scientific discovery. But it also raises troubling questions on its possible repercussions on humanity's openness to truth and beauty, on our distinctive ability to grasp and process reality. And most recently, in a message signed by the Cardinal Secretary of State, Cardinal Parolin, to the United Nations AI for Common Good, which happened in Geneva, he said that as AI, the Pope said, as AI becomes capable of adapting autonomously to many situations by making purely technical algorithmic choices, it's crucial to consider its anthropological and ethical dimensions, the values at stake, and the duties and regulatory frameworks required to uphold those values. And I was reading that the Pope, the Holy Father, has taken another couple of days holiday, which is great because it's important to rest, but to write potentially one of the first encyclicals on AI. So that will be exciting if what I've read is true. And all of these words expressed by the Holy Father would surely resonate with Venerable Mary. I believe that she'd also welcome the White House's executive order on AI, the EU's AI Act, and the UK's National AI Safety Institute. She'd see the need to regulate and to govern well. AI legacy and memory, Mary Aikenhead's enduring presence. Technology enables new ways of sharing the wisdom, values, and stories of those who have gone before us. It allows us to interact with the past in more dynamic ways than books or archives. I believe that Mary would see the potential in these tools for passing on wisdom and values. For Mary Aikenhead Ministries, AI technologies might offer new ways to share her charism with the next generation. Digital archives are already making the stories of Mary and the Sisters of Charity more available to those who carry on their work. Interactive learning experiences help new staff members and volunteers internalize the values and approaches that have guided the ministry since their beginning. She'd surely want digital tools to complement rather than replace the passing down of values through relationships, mentoring, community, the heritage centres and pilgrimage. And I think that she would ensure that any digital preservation of legacy remained true to the spirit and purpose of her mission. She was a humble leader and we've spoken of humility this evening. When the bishop came to the convent and found her scrubbing the floor in her work clothes, he asked to see the leader. Without revealing her identity, she went to change into her formal habit and returned to meet him. And he didn't realize that he'd dismissed the very person he'd come to see. This humility would characterize Mary's approach to digital technologies as well. She'd not be interested in using them to increase her own status, but rather to extend the reach of the sisters' ministry and to empower others to serve with love. She would lead in a way that makes people flourish, that it enables their flourishing. So finally, Mary Aikenhead for our time. The conclusion, you'll be pleased to hear. As we explore Mary's potential response to artificial intelligence and digital technologies, we find a compass, not a handbook. I believe that Mary would evaluate each new tool based on its impact on the most vulnerable and how it contributed to the mission. She'd strike a balance between innovation and tradition, between efficiency and compassion. She'd make sure that technology is never an end, but a means by which to extend and enhance the mission. Mary's legacy is dynamic, a living charism that continues to evolve in response to the needs and opportunities of each new era. Just as she innovated to better serve the poor, I believe that she would innovate to respond to the needs of those living in the AI era. She might even have requested a meeting with Pope Leo to discuss how she could support him in his new AI mission. From Dublin to digital, Mary's vision remains our guide, to see in every innovation an opportunity to serve those most in need and to bring Christ's love to all, especially those who live on the margins. If we approach AI with Mary's commitment to human dignity and to serving the most vulnerable, then these technologies can advance her mission in new ways, something that St. Vincent's Health Australia, Mary Aikenhead Education, St. Vincent's Care Services are already doing. If we do this well, I believe that Mary would look upon our work not with a raised eyebrow, but perhaps even with joy.
It's my great pleasure to acknowledge very briefly, Maggie's going to take some questions. We've got about 20 minutes for questions from the floor and for those of you on online. And I think we might have the connection for people. So just while Maggie's getting her breath, abundant thanks. That was amazing. You've really honoured us in your preparation and recognised the breadth and the richness of our ministries. You've taken us to another way of thinking, some great creative responses. Across our ministries on probably a semi-regular basis, leaders would ask each other, what would Mary do? Today, Maggie, you've given us the compass on what Mary would do with AI. So please join me again in thanking Maggie, and we might start taking questions. We have Troy and Angela with the roving mic. So we might start with here and then take some. Penny's going to read the ones from the people online. So you're right.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you.
I've got one here. I'll start here. Together, and we'll go to a second. Okay. Hi, thank you, Maggie, so much for that wonderful talk. It was really intriguing to think if Mary were here, what she would do with all this technology. I think we in our present day still struggle. We see the positives and also the challenges. I guess my question is really regarding the challenges with our service to the poor, with our mission. And also in recent context, for example, with COVID, we saw that technology is expensive and not always accessible to the poor. What would Mary do to help increase access, I suppose, to all these wonderful technologies and the possibilities so that everybody has equal access?
I think that's a great question and a really important question. And I think it always begins with reflection and prayer. And also, I look at Erin's work because Erin has brought together mobile units to serve the homeless, and within those units there's also others have come, and there's a mobile unit called Four Voices, which is particularly for women, and there if you need a mobile phone, you can be given a mobile phone. So that's practical outreach on the ground in the city of Sydney. In terms of other things that she may do, I think she would always consult. I don't think she would ever do it on her own. And I think she would always want to bring into any decisions the voices of those with the lived experience, that she would never ever run off and do it alone. And also I'm just thinking of Sister Anne's work in St Vincent's College, being a college companion. I think potentially she would look for AI companions, people that would be happy to accompany and help navigate this new world that's evolving. But it's a question that always has to be asked, and it's a really important question.
Hi, my name's Gavin Piltz. I'm from an organisation called Objective Leader. I wanted to ask you, you said that technology must enhance, not replace human connection. I think everyone in this room would agree with that. What I'm curious about is how do we respond in or react to the organizations and people developing AI who do not share this value?
I think that's a critical question that you ask. And I think we all have a responsibility in this room to make sure that we're involved in some way. And what that looks like in practice is, say at St Vincent's College, one of the teachers received a scholarship to have AI specialist training. And one takeaway is to consider that everybody within each ministry has a form of specialist training, because we need people of faith on boards. We need people of faith on Sydney boards where new AI is being developed at speed. To be honest, I don't think there's ever been a more opportune time for people of faith within this world of AI. Every tech leader wants to go to Rome. Every tech leader wants the year of Pope Francis. And I think every tech leader wants the year of people of faith and the people in this room.
Hi. I was just wondering if we've talked a lot about the, cost and access to AI in healthcare, but I wonder if there's areas of healthcare where technology or AI-led solutions might become like the lowest common denominator, and actually having the human touch might be the privilege. I was thinking perhaps mental health, for example, and like the people without the money might end up with the ones that are doing like self-service checkout on their health or their mental health. Do you think that's a risk as well? And
are you, sorry, where do you work?
Oh, I'm from Caritas Australia. I'm the media lead. So it's a bit outside my realm, but I just thought it was interesting.
No, it's a great question. I would think of it in two ways. First of all, from a UK perspective, an NHS 10-year plan has just been published. And within it, there are 5 digital priorities, and those priorities are data, genomics, robotics, AI, and I've forgotten the 5th, but wearable technology. And with AI, the desire is that GP practices have ambient AI. And I think this is a great idea, and it relates to the personal touch, because if doctors can spend their time, that 10 minutes, they only have 10 minutes with the patient, listening to the patient, and then the ambient AI with an intense adherence to privacy and security is taking notes and then structuring those notes, and then obviously there's human oversight because the GP signs off on their notes, then that can only be a good thing for all, and for the dignity of all, and for the equity of all. In terms of self-service, I do agree with you in terms of I think that's could be a huge area of weakness where you have to pay for specialised care for one-to-one care, and others may be given the just the digital option alone. Within our blueprint for the next 10 years, it's said that it's from bricks to clicks, and there's an assurance, and I hope it is an assurance, that for those who can't reach the GP via digital, that there will always be a phone line on hand, and if there isn't, it would be within our right to call that to question.
Hi, we have a question online from Alison Burt. How would Mary deal with the issue of data integrity in the many databases that inform an AI response, in the context of having no influence over that body of data, i.e., who may be behind the scenes increasingly influencing such databases, and how those databases might be skewed without the ordinary person being aware?
Again, that's an excellent question. And again, I come to several points. First of all, on boards, I think there is a need for an AI professional, not necessarily an AI person. It could be a philosopher, it could be someone, a theologian, it could be somebody who has a particular specialism that would be of use to a board. Also, I think there's a critical need on a board for cybersecurity experts. But coming down to the actual integrity of the data, again, this is each of our roles within this room is to question where has that data come from, and also to be conscious in our own use of platforms, whether that be Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, that we would never put data on there that is private data, that is data that should only be used within a private platform. I think this, in terms of with Mary Aikenhead Ministries, the whole question of data, because you have so many ministries, it's a key live question, isn't it? And perhaps one for debate, consultation with stakeholders, because that data is incredibly important. I don't know whether that fully answers the question, because it's so deep, so rich, and it would need exploration. It would need a whole day to fully unpack it and open it up.
Thanks very much for the lecture, Maggie. I'm Xavier Simmons from the Plunkett Centre for Ethics. I work in bioethics, and one of the big principles of bioethics, of course, is the notion of autonomy, patient autonomy, as well as autonomy more broadly across the health sector. And I think that one concern I have about AI is its potential to constrain the agency of both patients and clinicians, because it's so powerful, and it has a data set which far surpasses the amount of information that any single human being could possibly accumulate throughout the course of their life. And yet, obviously, human beings acquire a wisdom through their life which has value and rightfully informs decision-making. So I just was wondering if you could comment on whether you think that's a challenge, and how, if so, we might address that.
There's a brilliant book called The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleiman, and within it he speaks of what you speak of, and the need for containment, and because it's accelerating at such a speed, and with regards to the containment, it's important that not everything is open source, and it's important that we really are aware of what we are making public, because we can see billions and billions and billions are being chucked into this industry. So certain elements of it need to slow down. And that's why I come back to the point about the need for ethicists and the need for good governance and the need for us all to be involved in that. Penny.
Hi, I've got a great question from Deirdre in Melbourne. Thank you for a wonderful oration. Australia has a particular challenge with its geography and vast distances. AI depends on efficient technology, as you say, but do you have any comments on the impact of our geography on successful human-centred AI?
Gosh, that's a great question. How would that best be answered? I think we saw during COVID that people were able to keep in contact with those that they loved through the virtual, and people began to understand technologies in a way that they perhaps hadn't before. But there is no real replacement for the human. There's no real replacement for having a hug, for seeing the person that you love face to face. So that one, there's no simple answer, because when it's possible, it's important to travel those thousands of miles to see someone.
Hello. My name's Sapelli, and I'm the manager of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health at St Vincent's Public Hospital. My question would be, AI is moving very, very quickly, and we are concentrating more on how we deliver and focusing more on the patients. And yes, for clinicians, yes, it will help them and assist them. But I guess it's also, how can we make sure that we're keeping clinicians in jobs? And then also, how can we continue to entice our children to go into the areas of health and medicine when AI is coming in to potentially take their work? So it's like, how can we make sure that the human touch remains if AI is growing so quickly and moving into the world?
And it's the perfect question that you asked, because everybody's questioning the future of work, and in whichever industry, whether it's legal, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's the hospitality industry, whether it's the robots that come with your food. So I think the essential part is that we all lean in, and we all look and see how things work, and ask questions and read books. And with regards to the attractiveness of a career in medicine, I don't think there could be a nobler career. And I think there will always be the need for the doctor, the nurse, the occupational therapist, the physiotherapist, the carer. And I would hope that AI will enable the frontline worker to be with the person in front of them for longer, and to spend time really listening to them.
Thank you, Maggie. That's probably a great way to end. But do you have any last comments that you would like to end before Richard gives a vote of thanks?
Well, it's just a special thanks to Megan, to Renee, to Penny, and to Margaret, really, for looking after me so well. I've had a wonderful time, and it's been such a gift to be with you and to learn so much from all of you. So thank you.
As we draw to a close, what I think all of us would agree has been a fascinating, interesting, reflective evening. I wanted to take a few moments just to express my gratitude, not my attitude, to all who have made this year's Venerable Mary Aikenhead Oration such a meaningful gathering. Firstly, obviously, to our keynote speaker, Maggie. Thank you, Maggie, for sharing your insights, your intellect, your challenge to us all. Your words have helped us to consider Mary Aikenhead's vision, not as a relic of the past, but as a living, dynamic force that must continue to shape how we engage with the digital, with the technological frontiers of today. You have helped us reflect more deeply on the ethical and human questions that must accompany innovation, and we thank you for guiding that reflection with such clarity and conviction, Maggie. You've given us such a lot of intellectual material, but I have a small material gift to give you. They told me Maggie was going to be a very good orator, and Maggie, you've been more than a very good orator. You've been extraordinary. Thank you again for what you've done. Can I also thank the Associate Deputy Vice Chancellor for Education, Professor Tanya Broadley, and to the ACU staff. Thank you for so generously providing the facilities and support to host this evening. Your partnership in education, faith, and public discourse is deeply valued. To all of you here, both online and in person, sisters, leaders, partners, educators, health professionals, and friends of Mary Aikenhead Ministries, thank you for your presence, and thank you for the spirit of openness and engagement you bring to this annual oration. Your ongoing commitment ensures that Mary Aikenhead's legacy remains not just remembered, but reimagined for our times. Tonight, we've been reminded that Mary Aikenhead was a woman of vision, courage, and deep compassion. A woman who saw the face of Christ in the poor and responded with faith that built communities of hope. In this age of algorithms and artificial intelligence, when technology can dazzle but also divide, may Mary help us remain grounded in the values she held so dearly: love, justice, compassion, and hope for every person. As we leave, may we carry forth the light of her vision, ensuring that our human and technological gifts serve the common good, that they restore dignity where it is most needed, and that they bring compassion where the world so often is just looking for efficiency. May Mary Aikenhead's vision continue to shine ever more brightly from Dublin to every corner of our digital world, guided always by love, justice, compassion, and hope. Thank you all for being here, and have a wonderful evening.